This video is looking at the first chapter of the OCR Computing. So this chapter is called Fundamentals of Computer Systems. Within this chapter, we have 5 different things we need to cover. This video is only going to cover 3, so this is the first part. We need to cover and understand how to define a computer system, describe the importance of computer systems, and explain the need for reliability in computer systems. First thing I want to do is start off with a definition of what a computer system is. Now this is what I think a computer system could be defined as. In its simplest form, a computer system is any system that comprises of at least one input, a processing unit, an output, and a storage device. Okay, so that's what I think a computer system is. If it has those elements, we define it as a computer system. Now, there are 2 key things you need to remember. That computer systems have hardware. Now, this is the physical components that make up a computer. So if we're thinking about the internal components, such as the CPU, the RAM, which is the main memory, and then the other devices that we can have, such as input devices like mouse or keyboard. Now these are all classed as hardware, so it's anything that you can physically touch. Now the opposite of hardware is software. This is referring to the code. It's referring to the programs. So any coding you've done in Python, and if you've created a program, basically that's software. Software is also classed as the operating system, so XP or Windows 7, and then the programs within there as well are classed as software, so Word, Excel or PowerPoint. Now there are lots of examples of computer systems which you can read on the screen, but just a few I would like to name: smartphones, laptops, televisions. Okay, so a lot of televisions are now smart televisions. These are all classed as computer systems. Now this is how a computer system is structured. We have input, which is instructions going into the computer system. We have storage. This is where instructions or data is temporarily stored. The process is responsible for fetching those instructions. So the CPU fetches those instructions. It puts those instructions onto the register, and then what it does is it goes through those instructions that it has fetched, and it decodes each one, and then it finally executes them. So this is known as the fetch cycle, which we will go through in more detail at another video. And then finally we have output. So this is the result of the processing, which is then outputted using a monitor or a speaker. That came up in the 2015 exam paper. This question is worth 3 marks, and what you've got to do is identify the input, output and storage for this particular device, which is a smartphone. If you read the question properly, for the storage it's referring to secondary storage. Now that means it's referring to the permanent storage and not the main memory, okay, which is RAM. So what I would like you to do is pause this video, try to answer it, and then afterwards compare it with what we have on the screen, or what I have on the screen. So the first input for this is the touch screen. Okay, this is what we use to select things, to open things, and to type. The second input that we can identify is the physical buttons. So these are the hardware. So if you say home button or power button or the volume button, any of this is correct answer. The third thing I'm looking for is the microphone. Okay, this is an input device because it allows us to record our audio. We also have a camera as well, the back, I'm sure, so that could be also another input device. The only other one that is the tricky one to identify is the accelerometer. So that basically tells us the position of the phone, and it also used to control when you're playing games, to control the vehicle and so on. Now the output for this, okay, is the speaker. The speaker is an example of an output. the screen itself is an output, and LEDs, if you've got, for a lot of Android phones have these, so if you get a message, the LED light lights up and you can see. And finally, the secondary storage, this is where you store things, so SIM card, where you're storing your contacts, as well as the solid state memory for storing the operating system, because think about it, phones don't have any moving parts. And then finally, SD card for storing those pictures. So any of those would give you a mark. So if you say touchscreen, LEDs, and SIM card, would give you 3 marks. Now these are the things, when I was marking the paper, these are the things I came across, and I want you to remember these answers and make sure you don't put them. USB cable is not an example of anything in there. Headphone is an example of an output, but it's saying the smartphone, it's not saying any extra attachments. Power cable has nothing to do with any of this, and neither does a hard drive, because a hard drive has a moving part. Okay, so they're the things you've got to remember. Now the second activity or second question that I've taken from an exam paper is looking at how this computer terminal in the train station, and it's used to sell tickets. Now what you've got to remember is what can we do to adapt, or what can we do to change this terminal so it's adapted for blind users. So pause the video again, think about a couple of things you can do to adapt this. Now the first thing we can do is use Braille keyboard. So this is for the inputs, so the user can feel the different keys. We can also have printouts that are in Braille as well. Okay, so the reason why we have Braille keyboard is because they're familiar with the feel of it, and if we have Braille printouts, they can also feel the prints and they can check the instructions. So they can double check, for example, the information is correct or not. And we can also use speakers. So speakers can be used, for example, to tell the user what they've selected. And again, for security reasons, we won't use any for feedback when there's a pin being entered.